Hi, everyone. Welcome to Authenticity with Alicia, the podcast where we explore burnout, the pressures of society, and our quest for identity and authenticity. I'm Alicia, and today we're joined by one of my dear friends, Tristan McBain. She's a couples and sex therapist, business coach, and a wanderprenuer. And if you've never heard that term before, we're going to talk lots more about it. So thank you so much, Tristan, for joining me today.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Oh my gosh, I know. I am so excited to have you. You are one of my dear friends, colleagues. We've met each other in the Michigan therapy realm. So I'm just so glad to chat with you. And I just love living vicariously through you and your nomadic life. And so for folks who don't know what like a wanderpreneur is or what a digital gnome or what a nomad is, like what do those things mean?
Yeah, so to me, the term wanderpreneur means it's kind of this way that I blended my love for like travel, like this wanderlusty spirit that I've always had with entrepreneurship. So I started my own virtual private pay practice so that I could kind of live this travel-led lifestyle. So wanderpreneurship to me kind of just like captured both of those really well.
I love it. Yeah, and that's like a newer term that I've heard you kind of be using. So it's exciting to get to like hear more about that story. Because yeah, you've been like part of this nomad life for like 2.5 years now, right?
So with COVID, like really that's kind of how it all started with
Mm,
the pandemic when, my work as a therapist went remote. So I'd worked remote for a couple years and then I kind of found myself in this place where I was like, well, like I had a dream of opening my own practice and I was kind of like, well, why not make it virtual and
mm,
be able to travel around? I had seen like other therapists that had kind of ventured into that and
mhm.
it was so appealing. It was something that spoke so dearly to my heart. And I was like, I gotta find a way to make that happen.
That's so cool. So wait, so before COVID, did you have any like dreams or ideas to do like a digital virtual practice?
Yeah, so it's kind of funny because when I was in my early 20s, um, I remember saying things like to my friends or to like the partner that I had had at that time. Like, I remember saying, if I was rich, I would like not even have a house. I would just travel from place to place. I don't even think that I knew the word nomad existed at that time.
Yeah.
Um, so I did have like I always had this pull to travel, but I had also always been like very inundated in the world of there is a right path that everybody
Mm,
follows. And so
mhm.
I had been very focused in like career orientation, like what do I want to do with my life as
Yeah.
far as work goes? And that's why it was always kind of like a pipe dream where I was like, well, if I was rich and I didn't need to work,
Mm,
then I'd be able to travel full time.
yeah.
So then when I was able to figure out, well, actually, you don't need to be rich to do it, it kind of just opened up like a whole new chapter.
That is wild. I think you're so right though, because I mean, like before COVID, I never thought about doing a virtual practice either, right? Like in our field, I know every field has their own kind of like expectations and norms. And I think in the therapy field, like there was kind of some stigma around, digital therapy and oh, if you go travel and take a lot of time off, and if you put your needs first and you're being selfish and you're not taking care of your clients, you're not dedicated, all blah, 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 blah. And then COVID happened. And like it just really like shifted, I think, the mental health field because now we're like, oh, we can take care of ourselves. We can have wants and needs and be better therapists and serve more. Like it just was like a game changer. And it sounds like for you, it really got to like help shatter that. Oh, one day, maybe if I'm ever rich, you're like, oh, I can do these things now.
Yeah, yeah. And it was very liberating, honestly, like when
Hmm.
I had that realization. So initially, I really just loved working from home. Like
Me
I
too.
I did okay like during quarantine, like being at home. Like I actually think it was a welcome, it was almost kind of like a break for me
Hmm.
because like prior to COVID, I had recently graduated with my PhD. So I had lived this very like busy life of
Yeah.
commuting, teaching, publishing, writing, researching, I'm, working as a therapist. I had two or three jobs at a time the entire time I was in doc school. So like I went from like having to be two, three, four places, maybe even more sometimes during the course of a day to just being at home.
Yeah.
And so like working from home initially was something I really enjoyed. And then, like I said, a couple of years later, when I decided to, figure out how could my own practice look within that realm,
Mhm.
it kind of just felt like all the pieces came together, because I
Mm.
was already working from home. And then it was like, all right, well, how can I transition then into being an entrepreneur with a
Yeah.
virtual practice? But the funny thing is, I actually had quit my job in a I was in a virtual group practice, and I quit that job and started traveling full time. And then I started the virtual practice. So I actually kind of like looking back on it, I kind of laughed because I really went all in on this
I
idea.
love it.
And I didn't even really give it a second thought. I was just kind of like, okay, well, this is what I'm doing. And it never really was a question of like, is this going to be successful or not? It was like, all right, I'm going to make this decision. And I went all in. And it's been like a really amazing like adventure,
Yeah.
honestly. It just has.
It's just like the blind faith of like, this is what I'm doing. It's just gonna work out. Like it kind of has to, and you'll figure it out. Oh, I just love seeing your adventures and seeing you get to like live the life that like it's like you've been pulled to and drawn to for a while and be able to like have a practice that makes sense for you. That's something that I know like we're both pretty passionate about is like not doing that like should way. Like there's not like one path for people. I know we both have those similar values of like if you travel all the time, that's great. If you don't want to travel and you want a home base, but you want to be able to travel more, like you help people with that as well. And so you really just like meet people where they're at and then help them make those practices.
Yeah. And I think another like kind of perspective that I bring to the table with this is like, this was my way. I don't think it was my intention at the time, but it was my way of restructuring my life so that my life did not have to revolve around work and my career. And it was a restructuring so that now, like, really, like my needs, my wants, like what is, I can actually think about how do I want to structure my day, my career, where I live, my life, in a little bit of a different way than what I had been taught. And
Mhm.
so when I work with other therapists and when I talk to people about like my life of wanderpreneurship, that's a big part of it. I mean, and that's really like I think a piece of the biggest core of what it is that is meaningful to me about living this lifestyle is like it's not just like traveling and having your own business, but it's like the why behind it. Like why does that even matter? And it's not because that lifestyle is great for every single person,
Mhm.
but it's because like I chose this lifestyle because it was what felt like was the most aligned for me. And when I
Yes.
really was able to kind of let go of like, how is this supposed to look? How is my career
Mhm.
supposed to look? How is being a therapist supposed to look? And then
Yeah.
when I really kind of put my own hat on of like, what do I want it to look like? This was kind of what came out of it.
Oh, and it's like seems like it's more sustainable that way too, of like instead of you trying to fit into these like predetermined boxes and just like doing the work, going through the motions, maybe getting burned out or not loving life. Like you could probably do that and maybe for a little bit, but it didn't seem like that'd be as fulfilling. Whereas now it's like you get to live your life and have these amazing experiences and meet new people, try new foods, play with your dogs, and I know because I know you outside of this podcast, like that translates that energy into your work. Like I know you do such meaningful, good work because you are like a human outside of your work.
Yeah. I don't think I expected the reciprocity of both of these pieces the way that I've experienced it, because you're
Yeah.
exactly right. So it's like, you know, so I full-time RV. And so, I travel around the country, and seeing new places, like you were saying, like trying new foods, meeting new people, like that is just so it fills me with just so much excitement and contentment and fulfillment.
Mm.
And that really fuels my love for my practice because like my practice is my lifeblood to be able to do this. And the
Yes.
great thing about my practice is, I'm a couples and sex therapist, and I love what I do so much. And so I know that I'm showing up
Mhm.
as like my true authentic self. And I think that reflects in my work with my clients. And so like my clients, get this energy from me.
Mhm.
Um, and my business is doing really well. And so it's like the better my practice is doing, then the more I can funnel back into the lifestyle. So like I said, it's just this really beautiful relationship of both. And that's again going back to the term wanderpreneur. Like that's part of what excites me about it, and like
Mm.
part of I think the magic of like blending both of those worlds, because it's not super compartmentalized.
Mhm.
It really they feed off each other.
For sure. And yeah, and I know you were saying like the better your business does, and that allows you to, have that freedom and flexibility to do the other thing. But I agree. I think it goes both ways, right? Like the more you're able to like care for your soul, the more energy you're going to be able to put into your business and do good work and get those referrals and do the more like do that effort. And so like I think you're right. They both feed into each other and can benefit each other.
And I think that like for me, the best part is it doesn't feel like work. It
Mm.
feels like I'm in this like creative process. So like marketing, blogging, like these kinds of things that, maybe in another setting, maybe would be more of a headache. But when I sit down to do this, I'm excited. I'm like lit up inside over it. So yeah, I think that's been one of the best changes is I don't feel like I have to be in kind of like the grind of going to work every day,
Yeah.
and thinking back on what I call them the before times. So like back in doc school, like pre-pandemic, like back in the before times, like I felt so much like I said earlier, like my life just revolved around work and like all of
Mhm.
these things that I was supposed to do for other people. And I think that's been one of the best changes of all of this is I don't have to feel like I'm stuck in that anymore.
Yeah, I think that line and like that experience can resonate with a lot of people. I know, like, I've shared a lot about my own burnout experiences, and it's just like when I was so, like, I gave everything to my job. And then when that went downhill, I was like, well, I feel like I have nothing. And so it's like, it drained me. It took everything out of me. It wasn't fun anymore. I didn't think I was cut out for this field. And now I'm with you. It's like I found like that flow, right? Where it's like I do a lot too. I wear many hats, but they're fun. Everyone's like, oh my gosh, Alicia, aren't you so tired? I'm like, no, like I literally love everything that I do. And I agree with you 1,000%. If I was doing these same exact things, 5, 6 years ago in a different setting, I think I'd be too exhausted. I think I would be so burnt out and miserable, but I've made those changes for myself. And it sounds like you had to like did a lot of alignment and soul searching and like changes to make that happen for you.
Yeah. And what you were just saying there kind of like sparked another thought that I have about it, in that, if I don't, I'm not like attached to any particular like outcome in terms of what does this mean or where is this going to lead me? And so I always stay very open to the idea of, I guess the word that comes to mind is pivot, but I don't know, that might be kind of a strong word, but like what I'm saying is, I feel like I've got the freedom to really pay attention to who I am like right now and what
Yeah.
works for me right now.
Yeah.
And like, yes, I've set my practice up. The idea is to be sustainable over time, right? Like, yes, that is my plan. But I feel like I'm able to kind of be in the moment a little bit more with it. And I
Yeah.
don't have as much pressure on myself as I used to, because I'm not like living so much in the future of like, I've got to measure myself now against like all these things that haven't happened yet.
Yep.
Um, and so it really gives me like this ability to just appreciate my like practice and my work for what it is without a lot of pressure for it to, be something, right? Like a thing. So yeah, that feels really good to have the freedom and like the flexibility really to just kind of think about what's working for me right now, and knowing
Yes.
and like trusting in myself that I will have the confidence and like the tools and the ability to like pivot down the road if I needed to. And I think that like freedom or like that knowledge that that could happen really allows me to like go all in on what I'm doing
Mm.
right now because I'm feeling it, like that's what
Yeah.
I want and like what I'm drawn to do. So yeah.
I think that that's beautiful. I think that's a great way of phrasing that too. It's like getting to be more present and like trusting yourself, having that awareness and not needing like that survival strat. I think of it as a survival strategy of like, I need to plan and structure and do all these things to protect myself. And you're like, I hear you being like secure in yourself to be like, I've got what I want and need right now. If things come up along the way because life happens, I'll deal with them when I get there. And like how much more enjoyable than like that whole journey is rather than only being stuck in that future space and not even getting to enjoy all this hard work that you're putting in to these present moments.
Yeah, 100%. I feel very connected now with like my past and my future self, but I feel like my present self kind of calls the shots a little bit more. So,
Yes,
yeah.
that's a good way. Like they're around, but like you are the driver of the big
Yeah,
RV. So.
yeah, literally.
You mentioned something earlier, and that was one of my questions that I had were like, what were some of the things that surprised you when you started this wanderpreneur world?
Oh, that's a really good question. Um, I think one of the things that has surprised me is, you know, I think one of the things I wasn't expecting was how intentional I have to be, like how much it would lead me to like looking in the mirror. I guess
Hmm.
like that's the best way I can put it.
Hmm.
Um, I was not expecting for like this kind of lifestyle. When I say this lifestyle, I'm specifically like kind of referring to traveling full time, but
Hmm.
like your fears will come out. Your insecurities about what you think you're capable of,
Yeah.
that will come out.
Yeah.
And so I think that when I first started, I was kind of like, okay, I'm just gonna go have some fun. And over time, I've really built this amazing relationship with myself that wasn't there before.
Mm-hmm.
Because when it comes down to it, like there are a lot of times where it's me, myself, and I.
Hmm.
And I've really built up and what I've learned, I think the most is that I don't have to have all the answers. I don't have to know how to figure out every single thing. But as long as I have the trust in myself and the confidence in myself to say, like, it's okay, like, you're going to figure this out, then it does always work out. Like, I do always figure it out. So I think what I was most surprised about was how it would change my relationship with me for the better,
Yeah.
but really in this like very like empowering kind of way because I kind of feel like I can do whatever I want to do and like whatever I set my mind to. And I think there was some of that initially, like before I started. Um, but I think that has just grown and grown over
Mm.
time. Because I have been, like it does, you do get put in situations where you're kind of faced with, like I said, you're faced with the mirror. That's really what it is, regardless
Yeah.
of the situation. You're faced with what's going to come up in these particular situations and you're either going to deal with it and like move through it, like kind
Hmm.
of deal with your stuff, or you're not.
Hmm.
And like my thought was always like if I'm looking in the mirror now and this is what's coming up for me and what's being presented for me, I have an opportunity to work through it and
Hmm.
kind of go deeper in this relationship with myself and kind of where I'm at in my life and kind of where I'm headed. I know it's a little abstract to think about, but that has to be like the number one most surprising thing.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that though. And I'm a big sucker for metaphor and like even though I'm a very like logical person, your girl loves a metaphor and like abstract thought. So we're complex beings. But I appreciate you saying that because I think there is, I follow a lot of the travel therapists too, and I love them. And sometimes we see like anything on social media, we see highlight reels, right? Where it's like, hey, here are these benefits of doing that. And those are truth. Like there is a lot, like you said, it's freeing, it's empowering, it's an alignment, you've had this pull. There's also some like tough things about it. And it sounds like for you, it was able to allow you to grow and really like empower yourself and be secure in yourself and grow your confidence when you had to like tackle some of these things on your own. And like that's like the double-edged sword of like, yes, it's maybe like not fun in the moment having to do a lot of that stuff. And like you grew so much as a person and have this better relationship with yourself that you never even expected.
Yeah. And I am a historically anxious person. So, really to think about who I was even like 5 years ago, who was I 10 years ago? And, I mean, like obviously I know how to manage anxiety because, through school and stuff like that, like I would not have been able to get to the point that I did if I wasn't able to kind of manage it. But it was always kind of this like white knuckling kind of managing it.
Mm-hmm.
And now, like, it's more like if I feel that way, I kind of question it more, and it's more of an exploration and more of a, well, why do I feel scared about this? Or what is it that I'm worried about? What is it that's coming up? And then usually what I find is that, I mean, like, it always comes down, I'll call it from like being like from the inside out, right? Like, everything is from the inside out. And so, yeah, I think it's been like, I kind of looked at it as this opportunity to, in my mind, I think of it as almost kind of like growing up a little bit. I feel like
Mm.
the inner child in me is the one that's been very anxious and was conditioned to be anxious and was
Yeah.
conditioned to like, what is everybody thinking of me? And is this gonna
Mm-hmm.
work out? And how am I gonna handle this? And so, like, really, this, I feel like for the first time, I'm kind of coming into that place in my life where I feel like, I mean, it's kind of silly to say, but like I do feel like more mature in a way
Yeah.
that I didn't before, because even though I'm doing all of these adult things in my like in the before times, like
Uh-huh.
the way I felt about me was so like I just had such a I had a good relationship with myself, but I just was not like standing on my own 2 feet, like for me, the
Mm-hmm.
way that I am now. And there's something like about that that really just kind of puts it in a different ballpark.
I don't think that's silly at all. As you were talking about that, I was like, that literally is describing me, where it's like, I am responsible, I'm adulting. I go to the dentist and I feel like I'm 12 years old. Like, I don't feel like fully like an adult. Like you're saying, like, yes, I have a decent relationship with myself. I have all these things, but I'm hearing like this just more secure version of you, of just like, I feel more confident, secure, like in charge, rather than these like survival strategies of the anxiety that's like kept you and like helped you, get through some tough moments, but you don't need them right now at this point in your life.
Yeah. Well, and I think that that's a work in progress, honestly. So, like, because like I said, like I've had anxiety and depression. Like I've struggled with that like throughout my life. I have a PTSD diagnosis. So I've like struggled with nervous system regulation, like, all that kind of like
Mm-hmm.
trauma, right? And it's not that living this way, like, of course it doesn't make it go away, but I've really like, kind of being out here and I'm away from my family, like I have to rely on myself. And
Mm-hmm.
when I'm literally relying on myself to get like my RV from point A to point B, it's, and I'm feeling like anxious about it and stuff like that. Like to me, that's an opportunity to be like, okay, but wait a minute. If this is coming from the inside out,
Yeah.
this is my opportunity to really ask myself, why am I so nervous about this?
Mm-hmm.
Because really, like at the end of the day, like I'm doing the things, I'm doing the action, and like I can trust that.
Mm-hmm.
It just, I don't know, like I don't know how else to explain it, but it does feel like more secure.
Yeah.
Certainly still have those moments of like, what's
Right.
happening?
Right.
But definitely like the way that I'm looking at those situations now comes from a very different perspective, and how I deal with it is coming from a very different place.
Yeah, I was gonna say it sounds like how you're responding to those things is maybe very different now than maybe how it would have been handled maybe like 6 years ago, because your context is very different. You're very different. And so it's a good reminder for folks where it's like even on our healing and growing journey, doesn't mean like, oh, I'm never gonna be stressed. I'm never gonna be anxious again. But it's our responses can change. Our the way that we view things can change. And I'm definitely hearing that a lot in like your more recent examples.
Yeah. And one of the things I tell my clients too is like you're never going to arrive like, you there it's not so black and white, right? Like where you get to that point where it's like, okay, I just never have to deal with this again. But I do think it's kind of this evolution of
Mm-hmm.
how do you deal with it, and, how, and probably the better like that gets over time, like probably the less that you do kind of find yourself in those situations, because the things that used to bother you, you experience them a little differently. So I think that's kind of the point, and that's why it kind of connects back with what I was saying a little bit ago about not being afraid
Mm,
of like, well, what if something's different in the future? Like, I can always pivot, like you can always kind of, I don't know. I guess it's just a really great way to think about, you know, dealing with what's happening right now in the moment, and just trusting that, if you're open to exploring like what's coming
hmm
up for you, and like where, like what is that pulling you toward, like what is that
hmm
telling you, I guess.
Yeah.
um there's kind of a path forward through it, and it doesn't have to be scary, because I think sometimes I hear my clients, it's kind of coming from this place of like, I don't want to feel this way anymore because it's so overwhelming to feel this way.
Mm,
I don't want to, I don't like dealing with it. And I
hmm
think the more that, you kind of go through this kind of a process, the more it's like, well, I used to look at this like, oh yeah, these things are scary, but now it's kind of like, this is telling me something, and I can take
Yes.
this and actually do something different with it.
hmm
That's probably going to help me be aligned.
Yes. Oh, and I'm glad you brought that word back up, align, because that was something that I was like, a very like Tristan thing to say is something that you do a lot with folks is you help empower them to like have this soul alignment. And I love that word. I love all these like fun, catchy words. Like, what does that mean though? Like for someone listening where they're like, that sounds interesting, but like, what can you tell us more about what a soul alignment is?
Yeah. So the way that I think about soul alignment is really tapping into intuition, because
Hmm.
I think that, like, if I think about myself and my life, I think looking back, there were always things that I knew about
Mm.
myself, or like
Mhm.
a direction that I was pulled. And so like going back to what I was saying about, if I was rich, I would just travel from place to place. Like that idea is something that is very soul aligned for me. And I know
Mhm.
that because like it's been something I've been drawn to, something I know about myself
Mhm.
for like pretty much as long as I can remember. Um and I think in this, on the flip side of it, like there are certain things that I know about myself in terms of like, I know that's not for me. I know
Mm.
that that is not something I'm interested in. And I think that like soul alignment is important because the box that society, and sometimes to some degree like our families or maybe our partners, our school, church, like media, like whatever it is, sometimes like the path that is kind of predicted for us doesn't always match with soul
Mhm.
alignment. And so I think soul alignment is important because, I think it's kind of the guide, like our own intuition is our guide of what kind of life do we want to lead,
Mhm.
and how much of that overlaps with what we've been taught we should want, and what's different, and how do you kind of play with that so that you can build something that can sustain your
Mhm.
life, because we all got bills to pay, right?
Mhm.
But something that like really feels like it's for you, because I also think that like the other side of soul alignment is our ego. And so like I
Mm.
might know something is soul aligned for me, but if something in my ego comes up about, like, oh, you shouldn't want that, or you can't do that, like
Mm.
it's fear or insecurity or something like that, the question is, well, am I gonna kind of live in that, I'm gonna stay in this world,
Yeah.
where the barriers from my ego are kind of, you know, uh, putting me there because I haven't worked through that, versus like, I know this is soul aligned. And so when those things pop up, I'm actually going to deal with them because I don't want them
Mm.
to get in the way of like the bigger picture, the bigger life that I want to lead,
Yeah.
if that
That
makes sense.
makes it does. I was supposed to say like that makes total sense. And I do a lot of work with value alignment and it's similar things, but I think that soul alignment really takes it kind of like a little bit more like intrinsic and deeper at a deeper level. And so I really like I might also start incorporating that into my work because I think that's so real. And I love how you're like the ego side of it too, of like just like soul alignment isn't always this easy path. Like there are real things that can come up along the way that make this, our insecurities, our imposter syndrome, life's barriers come up. And it's like, again, I hear like your current mindset of like, I'm going to choose that this is an opportunity to kind of overcome and grow some of these things so I can maintain this soul alignment that's really important for me, rather than avoiding it or being scared of it and letting those things take control. And that's not easy work, so I'm glad that like you sound like you get to really like explore that with a lot of your clients and help them maybe at some of those crossroads that they face.
Yeah. I think a lot of people, like just from my conversations with people that I work with and like even people that I meet on the road, I think a lot of people know what they want. They
Mhm.
have an idea of a direction that they want to go or something that they're drawn to. And so I think that really like the work that I do is really about how do you dismantle the barriers, whether because a lot of times I think like the barriers are more about us, more of
Mm,
like a mental barrier than, I mean, a lot of times like a practical issue, like you can make a plan to kind of figure that out.
yeah.
But a lot of stuff like, where it's going to actually stop is with us, because if we don't believe that we're deserving of it or capable of it, or, it's just easier to kind of stay with what I'm doing, like those
Hmm.
will keep you stuck. So a lot of what I do is kind of working through, well, what is it that's getting in the way
Yeah.
of this bigger picture of something that you're like, I want this so badly.
Yeah. Oh, no, that sounds so like freeing and empowering. Cause yeah, I mean, those things, like, I mean, I've been in those moments where I felt stuck and helpless and hopeless. And so to be able to have a safe space, to be able to like be supported, I know you're very compassionate and caring and empowering. And so it's so cool that you get to help not just like other, wanderpreneurs, but also in your individual and couple work. I think you do a lot of great work. And I want to be respectful of your time. One of my favorite things to ask at the end of the podcast is, how have you been practicing authenticity lately?
That's a good question too. Um, I think the best way I can answer this question is by sharing a little bit about my recent endeavor, which is so just a couple days ago, I upgraded the RV that I'm in. And so I actually got an RV that it's a travel trailer. And a couple months ago, I got a new truck. And I got something that was a little bit bigger than I was expecting to get. Um, Doing this like the RV lifestyle, I've been full-time RVing for over 2 years, but I have been full-time RVing kind of on and off during that time, and I've never done it completely 100% solo. So
Yeah.
this is my new chapter where I feel in my heart I am ready to
Mhm.
kind of go off, and it's going to be me and my dogs. But I think that that's probably the best example of authenticity that I can give is
Yeah.
like, this is the path that I'm feeling drawn. And even though I feel a little nervous, I know like this is where I'm supposed to be. And so that's been really great. Like just kind of being at this place where the wanderpreneur lifestyle that I started building a few years ago has really gotten me to this point
Mm.
where I'm just kind of able to keep doing it, but I kind of feel like I'm going like a step above where I've been, and it feels really great. Yeah.
Yeah. And I love like you're being like part of that authenticity is sometimes we get nervous, like even good things and like these empowering, fun adventures, it can be a little nerve-wracking at times. And it's just like how we're handling it and having that right mindset. And I know it's something you're working with. Well, I'm gonna like Wanderpreneur, you have a Facebook group all about wanderpreneurship. I know you do coaching, you do consulting, you do therapy work. So I'm going to drop all of Tristan's information in the comment section or in the little bios. Make sure to check her out because her stuff is fire, guys. Like it's so good. And so make sure to follow along. Thank you so much for joining and taking time out of your day. It's always so fun talking with you.
Yes, you too. Thanks so much, Alicia.
Well, folks, until next time, take care of yourselves and each other. And remember, the world needs the real you. So let's explore that authenticity together.